what's going on? This is that boy Fred. Welcome back to another video. And in today's video, we're going to be wrapping up the Kakashi versus the Sannin video, ending it off with, in my opinion, the strongest Sannin, Orochimaru. Now, this one is probably going to be the shortest out of the bunch because this answer, for the most part, to me, is, I wouldn't say obvious, but it's a lot easier to scale than the rest of them because Tsunade and Jiraiya were a lot, closer. And then the how I'm feeling about this Kakashi and Orochimaru, just it won't feel the same. But before we get into this video, I want to give you guys the biggest thanks I could possibly give. We haven't hit our big goal of 200, but man, every day that I check, it seems like we're going up in views and we're going up in sub counts. Like just a couple days ago, I was probably down almost 10 to 15 subs. When I made my last video, I believe, one of my last videos, I believe we were at like 177, 170, like 6 or something like that, somewhere in that range. We're now all the way up to 185, and at this point, it's the beginning of November. I'm guaranteed we can hit 200 by the end of the year. So let's keep all that energy coming. Let's keep the subs coming. Let's keep sharing the channel. Let's keep this thing growing, and let's keep it kicking. Now, with all that out the way, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'm gonna let you guys get straight into it. All right, now, of course, starting off with both of these characters' speeds and just the format of how we're going to do this, I feel like this would be a tad bit easier if I just go by part 1 and part 2 and then slice it off at the end, but with the war arc. So starting off with part 1, speed for both characters, I feel like they're both relatively close in speed. I would probably give the edge to Orochimaru. Not that it's mainly because neither one of these characters have huge speed feats in part 1. For the most part, Kakashi's best fight, if you would ask me, and most feasible fight in part 1 was the very first arc in the entire series, which was against Zabuza. And so, that's very, very far back for the most part. And then, his other major encounters were things like fighting in the, what is it called? The Chunin exams, the invasion of the Leaf, and then when he eventually fought Itachi for that little scramble. But for the most part, his only real fight in part 1 was against Zabuza, while Orochimaru's fight was against a stronger opponent, which was Hiruzen. And also, we know that Orochimaru was able to kill another Kage, being Rasa, the what are they called? Never mind, I don't care anymore. Yeah, you get what I'm saying. The Saiyan Village's Kage. I can't remember what he's actually called, and I'm not gonna try and remember which type of Kage he is. But yes, for the most part, Orochimaru was able to kill him, and then he had a more feasible fight, which was against Hiruzen. Because, to be honest, I'm gonna give you guys a nice little scale on basically how I feel the part 1 to go. We'll bring out a speed because honestly, I probably didn't even really need to go into speed because this fight doesn't kind of even get interesting until part 2. But I feel this is why I'm gonna just flat out say why Orochimaru wins part 1 pretty easily. For the most part, as we all know, Kakashi and Tsunade were both relatively equal in part 1. For the most part, everyone can agree to that. If you think one's stronger, so what? That still doesn't break the fact that they're relatively equal. And as we both know, and we all know, that Orochimaru and Jiraiya were relatively close. Whichever one you think is stronger, I personally think Orochimaru, so that's why he's a tad bit higher for me. And like I just said, Orochimaru and Jiraiya are more, on the same level, not Tsunade. Tsunade's under them. So Jiraiya and Orochimaru are both comparable to each other, and Orochimaru was comparable to Hiruzen, who Hiruzen was stated at his old age was stronger than every other Kage alive, meaning A, the Cloud Vigilance Kage, butchered that, Yagra, the Mist Kage, Anoki, the Stone Kage, and then Rasa, the Sand Kage. So he was stated to be stronger than all of these. Now, like I said, Orochimaru was also more so relative to Hiruzen at his old age. And then at that point in time, they said him and Jiraiya were relative, but if you ask me, like I just stated a little bit earlier, I believe Orochimaru was stronger. So then that's where Jiraiya kind of gets left dead in that middle between Tsunade and Kakashi, and then above that being Hiruzen and Orochimaru. So if I am putting Orochimaru on the Hiruzen level, I do not believe that Tsunade and Kakashi are there. Not to say they aren't close, because all of these characters at this point in time, if you ask me, are relatively close in strength wise. But Kakashi without the Mangekyo Sharingan, I can't seem to put him above any of these characters personally. I believe he is the weakest out of the bunch that I just named off. So at that point, with that weird scaling, if you see where I'm coming from, good. If you don't, it's all right. You're fair to have your own opinion on that one. I personally think that's a simple way of scaling. While I feel that part one Orochimaru beats part one Kakashi. Now, moving on to part two, it gets a tad bit more interesting. Now, the way I feel that this thing is they're still relative in speed. You could possibly give it a little bit more to Kakashi if you want to, but it doesn't really make much of a difference because their speed isn't going to be the thing that changes this fight. It's going to be based off Kakashi's Mangekyo Sharingan. Now, as we all know, Kakashi has one of the more broken Mangekyo Sharingans, being the Kamui dimension, and the fact is, he has the long range version of Kamui because Obito has the short range and the teleportation one into the Kamui dimension. So Kakashi has the long range one, which, as we've seen firsthand, can be very lethal. As he almost was able to successfully use it against Deidara and borderline almost warp away half of Deidara's body away. He was basically about to take it. He basically did take his arm. Yeah, he did take Deidara's arm for sure. And if he would have kept going, he possibly could have got a little bit more. But the one thing about Kakashi and the sad thing about it is that his MS does drain him extremely. So the thing about this is, I feel that Orochimaru in his weird state now, and part two, now you honestly could be very, canon with it and say that Orochimaru doesn't have arms, which technically right now he doesn't. But at the same time, it depends on how you want to scale these characters as well. Because as we all know, Orochimaru with no arms was able to basically go toe to toe with, was it Four Tails Naruto 3 or Four Tails Naruto? This is the same Naruto. Actually, a weaker version was the one that scared Kakashi. I believe just a tail. It was just a cloak. It wasn't even the avatar. The reddish, the real red one that made him look like a demon. You know, the one that went against Orochimaru. That version of Naruto was the one that Orochimaru with no hands was going back and forth with. Now Kakashi was getting scared of one that was just cloaked. So, you could definitely use that as a scale, but at the same time, you also got to remember that Kakashi I wouldn't say was struggling against Deidara, but this is the same Deidara that technically, had Gaara not had to forcefully defend the village, would have probably lost to Gaara. And, Gaara is just a one tails Jinchuriki. And you can argue who's stronger at this point in time you can argue which is stronger between the Naruto that fought Orochimaru and the Gaara that fought Deidara. It's up in the air. Whichever one, if you believe that Gaara is weaker, then you can compare the fact that Kakashi was relatively equal, or you could say slightly weaker than Deidara because of how limited he is with the MS. If he wasn't as limited, then I definitely could easily put him above Deidara. But you definitely still could put him above Deidara. I think it's fair if you do. If you don't, it is what it is. But I think it's definitely fair that if you want to put him above Deidara, that's fine. So putting him above Deidara would put him relative to this Gaara, who, if you ask me, I believe the Naruto that fought Orochimaru is stronger than this Gaara. So then this is the same Orochimaru that was just going toe to toe with this Nine Tails, version 2 of Naruto that I believe is significantly stronger than Gaara. I wouldn't, well, significantly is a strong word, but you get what I'm saying. I believe he's quite a bit stronger than this Gaara. I believe his speed is more impressive than Gaara. Now, Gaara's defense can definitely come in handy, but I definitely do think version 2 Naruto is pretty much stronger than the first Gaara that we see that fights Deidara. So, like I said, this Kakashi is comparable more to Deidara and Gaara in the beginning of part 2, all the way up into the war. I guess you could say when he got better with the MS towards the later part of the Akatsuki arc, you could say he gets slightly stronger, but I still don't think it truly changes the fact that Orochimaru had no arms whatsoever and was still doing just fine, if not at some points really beating Naruto. And so, with if you give this Orochimaru hands, it's most definitely like going to his half. So honestly, if you believe that Gaara is stronger than Naruto, then you can completely flip what I said and give that round to Kakashi. But I believe that this version 2 Naruto is stronger than that Gaara and that Kakashi and the Deidara. So I'm going to give this second round also to Orochimaru. Now, going into the war arc, this one's going to be a quickie one because it was stated quite a bit long ago how strong I feel that war arc Kakashi, I mean not Kakashi, I'm sorry, war arc Orochimaru is. War arc Orochimaru is the strongest version of him because he absorbed Kabuto, who now has Sage Mode. Now, Orochimaru now has absorbed some Sage Mode, and we all know how big of a boost Sage Mode is. Now, also, Orochimaru now has his arms back. Orochimaru also is much more profound with the reanimation jutsu now. And I haven't even brought that up. If Orochimaru whips out the reanimation jutsu at any point in this time of part one, more so because, like we stated in part two, he doesn't really have arms, so he can't really do it. But yeah, if Orochimaru whips out the reanimation jutsu, pretty much a GG. I don't feel like Kakashi at any point in time, unless you're downplaying Orochimaru, is really hanging with multiple reanimations at one time. So in that perspective, I do feel that with War Arc, Orochimaru being significantly stronger, now having Hashirama cells in him as well from absorbing Kabuto, and actually just having. All right, so what's going on? This is kind of a voiceover version of me. There was a slight mistake, I guess you could say, I made in the recording, and that's saying that Orochimaru fully absorbed Kabuto, which is from what it looks like in the panels when going over and editing, is slightly incorrect, but not fully, because while it states that Orochimaru took his chakra bag from Kabuto, it is fully not stated that he didn't not take any of Kabuto's, because Kabuto, as Orochimaru was taking his chakra back, did run out of Sage Mode and then proceed to not be in it anymore. So yeah, that's just that. Hashirama cells to begin with. But now he's just putting more on top of himself. So his regeneration is top tier. He has Sage Mode. He now has his arm back, so he can use all the jutsu that he's learned. And you can definitely argue that Orochimaru knows more jutsu than Kakashi, because Orochimaru's flat out thing is to learn every jutsu. So yeah, you can definitely argue that Orochimaru has more jutsu in his bag than what Kakashi does. And so in that perspective, I mean, Kakashi does get a lot faster, and I'll probably give War Kakashi the speed advantage. But as we all know, Orochimaru's regeneration is so immaculate. That's a big word for you. That, even getting cut up, or as we've seen, getting really done up pretty badly in the past, really hasn't done much to Orochimaru. He's a very slippery and sneaky character to kill. So it's very hard to catch him lacking. So personally, I'm once again going to have to give this one to Orochimaru. Now, I did probably go by this video and didn't get as depth as I did with the other ones. Went by it pretty quickly, actually. And that's mainly because, when you're so deep in the series, I don't really have to talk about Kakashi as much. If you want to know more so how I feel about Kakashi and where he scales, if I was you, I would go watch my Tsunade and Jiraiya video, because I did go more in depth about Kakashi in those videos. Because, like I said in the beginning, I felt that Kakashi was easily more comparable to Tsunade and Jiraiya than I felt that he was to Orochimaru, who I feel like it was someone who was kind of, I wouldn't say foreshadowed, but yeah, I guess you could say foreshadowed that Kakashi would probably try and avoid Orochimaru at all costs if he could. So yeah, that's that. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Please be sure to leave a like and subscribe, and I'll talk to you guys in the next one.